Good Monday evening to you. I hope your week is off to a great start. Thanks for joining More Sports and Les Levine. Dave Bacon filling in for Les Levine tonight. Bud Shaw will join us to talk Browns Chiefs. We'll also have Chris Fedor on a little bit later in the show to talk about the Cleveland Cavs. Well, all good things have to come to an end, and that's the way the Browns playoff run ended, with a 5-point loss to Kansas City in the divisional round of the playoffs. Let's welcome in Bud Shaw. Bud, you know, I look at this, the Browns didn't play their best game by a long shot, but I think they let an opportunity get away. There was a real chance for them to win that game with Chad Henne at quarterback.
Absolutely, Dave. I said the same thing when Mahomes went out. When he got up, it looked like, he was, a boxer getting a standing 8 count. You knew he was not coming back into that game at that point. And I remember watching it and saying to my wife that, the Browns will win this game now, because it's not like Kansas City's trying to get by with Chad Henne for a series or two. They had to play an entire quarter with him, and in a one-score game. I thought it was a real disappointment, given the fact that they had a great season. I'm not taking that away from them to get where they got. I thought it was a real disappointment that they didn't finish that game off.
Yeah, and you got to give Kansas City some credit. The Browns didn't play well. I mean, if they had trouble running the ball in the first half, kind of fell behind in that hole, and then the defense couldn't come up with stops. I mean, that was kind of the MO of the season, the defense not being able to come up with stops. But Chad Henne on 3rd and 14 shouldn't be able to get 14 yards with 11 with 11 guys trying to stop him really anywhere.
Well, on that play, I think I saw where, Dustin Fox posted something to Twitter today where he talked about how they didn't bring any extra pressure on that play. They brought 4, they only rushed 4, and everybody else had dropped pretty deep. And, that's not the way you need to play against Chad Henne. I'm sorry. I could see giving Mahomes that kind of respect, but certainly not Henne. And that's not to take, to say he's an awful quarterback. It's just he walked into a really tough situation in a season where he's barely even gotten off the bench over there.
Yeah, and credit the Chiefs. They made the plays when they needed to. But the other thing is they didn't seem to bring pressure on Henne. And I get why you don't do that against Mahomes. And the thinking must have been they still have Kelsey who can get deep, and they still have Hill who can get behind the defense. So if we allow people in one-on-one, we still have some matchup issues. That's the only thinking I can come to as to why you don't get after Chad Henne.
Yeah, I think the immediate reaction of Browns fans after seeing their team go to the playoffs and win a game against a rival for the first time in however long it's been, is to walk away and be cursing the refs and the fate over the touchdown that got fumbled through the back of the end zone, and the idiocy of that whole rule. But I think in due time, the plays they'll remember from this game are the 3rd and 14 Chad Henne scramble, and then the 4th down play where they were clearly caught totally unaware of what the Chiefs were trying to do, as was I, by the way.
Yeah, and I get the whole helmets and people being frustrated by that. The thing that surprises me is in the college game, that guy's ejected for targeting, because you can go and review that. So that's something I think the NFL needs to look at. If they're truly going to thump the drum for player safety, they have to be able to look at plays that put player safety in danger and eject people from them. And I get it, they don't want to slow down the game and all that. Yeah, but you're either doing it for the safety of players or you're not. You can't have it both ways.
I can see in real time why that ref was focused on whether the receiver is going to stay in bounds and whether he's going to be able to extend the ball over the pylon. I could see why he might miss what the defender's doing on that play. But in review, it was clearly the kind of play that the NFL has decided that they want to outlaw from this game. And that, to me, is why you should be able to review something like that. And as far as that rule goes, Dave, listen, they had a couple of years ago, they had a chance to change that rule about the ball being a touchback if it's fumbled outside in the back of the end zone or on the sideline once it's in the end zone. And they decided that they weren't going to review it. And their reasoning was because it just doesn't happen often enough in the game. That's a terrible reason not to review something, as we learned yesterday. That I think they should change that rule to to where the ball is given back to the offense at the spot where he fumbled the ball, just as it would have been if it happened along the sideline short of the end zone.
Yeah, I get that line of thinking, and the only defense that I've heard that makes sense to it is, the holding in the end zone is a safety. If you're caught intentional grounding in the end zone, it's a safety. But that's you're basically by making that a touchback, you're bailing out the defense. You shouldn't bail out the defense for a mistake that the offense makes. Make the defense come up and do something to bail themselves out.
Absolutely. Now, if the defense recovers the ball in the end zone, I get it, because then they've done something. But on that play, they did nothing other than spear a guy in the ear hole, and they end up with the ball at the 20. And it was they don't have to then allow Mahomes to go down and the Chiefs to kick a field goal. But boy, talk about a big swing.
Yeah, and the one thing is Kevin Stefanski addressed the media today, kind of after reviewing everything. And, he's proud of his guys. They changed some things like the culture, but ultimately, Stefanski felt like the team came up a little short. Let's listen to Kevin Stefanski.
We definitely achieved a lot. We did some things we set out to do, but ultimately, we came up short. And there's a very real sense of disappointment there among our players and coaches right now. But we can definitely look back and see some things that we accomplished and be proud of that. When you're talking about culture, and I've said this before, I think you're just talking about people. And I think we have the right people in this building. I give Andrew Berry a ton of credit for the people he was able to bring in. I think there were a ton of great people here already. So we established a culture of work, and the players bought into that, and they did that. And that's what I told them today, that I'm very grateful for the work that they put in and week out. And we had a bunch of guys who go up and down the roster that just did their job, knew what their role was, worked hard. Sometimes we had guys that weren't active, and then they were active the next week and they're starting the following week. So I'm just appreciative of all those guys and the leadership they displayed. And
the Browns finally got it right. Browns fans, this is what an NFL franchise looks like. Let's bring Bud Shaw back in. And Bud, the one thing is the stuff coming from Berea we haven't seen in decades, probably since the Browns came back this year. And I mean that in a complimentary way, as far as the coach, the message, the GM, the players, everybody lined up finally. It took a while, but they finally got it right.
Hey, you and I both have lived through seasons where we or others have said, if nothing else happens this year, but the Cleveland Browns find their quarterback or their head coach, the season will be a success. And they found both. I think that's pretty clear right now that they have both of those. The biggest questions in football are both answered right now. And now it becomes the challenge becomes, how well do you draft when you're drafting where the good teams draft now? I think they'll have the 26th pick in the draft. I don't doubt for a minute that this front office can do something good with that pick and with others, but it's a different world up there, down there, I should say, in the first round than it was in the top 5 and first pick and top 10 picks like they've had for so long.
Yeah, again, I think Andrew Berry kind of proved the way he methodically addressed offseason this year that, he's not just an analytics guy. Analytics is a part of it, but he's a football guy, and that's good. I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we'll see them methodically address the defense in both free agency and in the draft.
The other thing that happened, and we alluded to it a little earlier in that game, was Mahomes was knocked out of the game. It led to some interesting things on social media. Let's take a look at Randy Mahomes. That is Patrick's mom. 51 Wilson, that's some trash football, leading with the helmet, pulling his head and pushing his helmet. Why are you not thrown out? Come on, NFL. Now again, that's Patrick Mahomes' mom. Let's listen to Kevin Stefanski as he addressed the question about the hit with Mac Wilson.
I mean, I know how it was perceived, but Mac's not a dirty player. We don't coach our guys to hurt anybody ever. So we're all hoping and praying that Patrick's feeling okay, and we want him to be ready to go this week. So I hope there's no hard feelings. I know Mac's intent was definitely not to hurt him at all.
And then we'll look at the tweet after the game. Mac Wilson just saying, hey, prayers to you, Patrick Mahomes. Hope you're back next week. Go be great like you've been. And Mahomes responds, all good to Mac Wilson. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Mom gets upset. I understand it. But it makes for an interesting social media endeavor.
Yeah, listen, the last time I know somebody's parent got upset about a hit was when Colt McCoy's father, rightly wondered what happened in the Pittsburgh game and why he was allowed to go back in it all those years ago. I watched this in real time and watched it a couple of times in slow motion, and I saw nothing wrong with the hit at all. In fact, I kept looking and trying to figure out what it was that caused the concussion, and it was hard to, other than seeing him get tackled up around the neck, I didn't see anything dirty there or anything, particularly damaging, although obviously it was.
I think what happened is the weight of his body he went forward over it, and kind of the weight, his head was snapped back. So, but again, it's just kind of interesting. And the bottom line, though, is, the defense didn't stop Chad Henne enough. I mean, when you get Mahomes out of the game, the defense, it's incumbent upon them. And they didn't really change what they were doing, which surprised me a little bit. I know you can't say, throw it completely away, but you can try to pressure him a little bit more.
Yeah, I thought the one smart thing the Chiefs did with a backup quarterback in is that they continued to try to get the ball to the guys that have gotten them where they're at in this league, and that's Hill and then Kelsey. And both of them made, Henne made a good throw to Kelsey on the one play. Hill made a really nice catch that Stefanski ended up, wrongly challenging. So they at least did that, and you're right. They're just the Browns did nothing to make Henne feel uncomfortable in that game. And then offensively, they just didn't make a play. I mean, the only big play that got made on either side of the ball down the stretch was a Myles Garrett sack, and nobody else really did anything. And that you need somebody to make something happen in these games when you're got a one-score game in a playoff situation in the fourth quarter.
But Sean, I will be back. We'll talk more Browns. Kevin Stefanski talked about the development of Baker Mayfield and where Baker stands. We'll hit on that when we come back. More sports, and Les Levine will be right back. Stay with us.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions, or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
Do you like Ohio State football? Would you like to get information from me, Doug Lesmerises, about Ohio State football without having to look at my face? We have got the plan for you. Become an Ohio State text subscriber through cleveland.com. You send a text, 614-350-3315. What do you get? 2, 3, 4 texts right in your phone every day about Ohio State football. Inside information, polls, voting, all kinds of things. You can be on our podcast. We take text subscriber questions on our Buckeye Talk podcast every week. If you really want to be involved with Ohio State football, in season or out of season, become an Ohio State text subscriber from cleveland.com. Send a text to 614-350-3315. 14-day free trial. What do you have to lose? $3.99 a month after that. 614-350-3315. I'll see you in your phone.
Tri-C is here for you. Now more than ever, you need a post-secondary education. So I encourage you to start your journey here at Tri-C. The majority of fall classes will take place online, but we've added a variety of formats to meet your learning needs, and we've taken many steps to keep you safe on campus. Whether you're ready to get started or your 4-year plans have changed, Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine. Dave Bacon filling in for Les Levine. Well, the Browns, a little bit of a disappointing loss to the Chiefs by 5 yesterday, but Baker Mayfield showed great development. I know he kind of got crazy and was trying to make something happen in that first drive of the third quarter, threw an interception because he threw late over the middle against his body. But all in all, Baker Mayfield has shown a lot of development, and Kevin Stefanski thinks it's going to continue to just keep going as he gets his second year in this system. For the first time ever, Baker Mayfield will have a second year in an offensive system.
Baker and I spent some time together today, and I can tell you he's very excited not to learn a new offense. So that's a huge part of this, is we can start at that baseline, we can start at that foundation and build on what we have done to date. I think there's a bunch of areas, Jake, where he did a very good job taking care of the ball, just learning this system and some of the intricacies of this system. And I knew that it was going to, get better over time with losing the offseason. And I think you saw that from Baker. I think once he started getting comfortable in what we were doing, once I got comfortable, or rather once I was using more concepts that he was comfortable with, which is a big part of this, I think he really started to play at a high level. So, proud of the progress he made. But if I had to put, if I had to say one thing, Jake, I'd say just taking care of that football.
And that is Kevin Stefanski talking about the development of the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Let's bring Bud Shaw back in. And Bud, we alluded to it, but boy, the Baker Mayfield now as opposed to at the beginning of the season, there's no question that fifth-year option will get picked up. The interesting thing is they don't really have to do anything as far as a new contract. They can kind of let it play out a little bit, make sure what they saw is what they think they have is what they have, and just wait on that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question anymore, Dave. I don't know at what point it flipped during the season, because I know in the first 5 weeks or so, I don't think anybody thought it would be a great idea to rush into an extension after seeing him. I mean, ball security was an issue, accuracy was an issue. Over the last 8 weeks, 9 weeks, probably even more than that, I thought he took that step that you want young quarterbacks to take. And there's no doubt that a big part of that was just being comfortable with what was happening offensively. Now, clearly he has some weapons around him, and Chubb and Hunt and the receivers came through this year for him, I thought, in the absence of Odell Beckham Jr. So, but that's what every quarterback needs. No quarterback, no matter how good he is going to go out there and show himself to be a franchise guy without help. So I think it's nothing but positives for this guy. And it's another thing that at this time every year, we'd already be looking at the college crop of quarterbacks and wondering what the Browns could do to get one of them.
Yeah, and the arm talent is there. You can see the mental, the makeup is, I know the interception when he threw that interception to start the third, I thought, this might be the end of this one. But again, he admitted you don't want to throw late across your body over the middle. Okay, he knows that. Don't do it. He's a competitor. He's going to try to find a way to make it happen. And in that situation, he realized they need points.
Yeah. Listen, the one thing he did early in his career that came back to haunt him was after having that success after the last 5-6 games of his rookie year, he kind of sat back and thought, hey, I got this figured out now. Look how well I did in such a short time. I think he knows now that he's tasted some real success, that he can't allow that to happen again. So I would suspect with Stefanski in charge and and Mayfield having already gone through that, that growing period where you don't know how hard it is to win in the league. There should be nothing but upside for this guy.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's go to the phones. We have Dick in Dayton. Dick, appreciate the call. What's on your mind tonight, Dick?
Hey, how you doing, Dave and guest? I just think, Dave, that we can build on this. The Browns have shown, they just played so good this year. And I knew with Baker, I kept saying, I kept thinking they would go to the playoffs. But I'm telling you that team with Chubb and them got to be pretty darn proud, Dave,
Yeah, I would agree. The one thing Bud and I have talked about, Dick, I think they let an opportunity get away because I think that was a winnable game, and I think that's why you heard the players yesterday talking about that.
I thought they would play them close. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they could build on this for next year.
Yeah, I would agree. As always, Dick, appreciate the phone call. Bud, when you look at what they may try to do, I think it's pretty obvious that defense needs some help. Now, having said that, they played without Andrew Billings, who defensive tackle who stuffs the run. They played without Grant Delpit, a safety that they wanted to put in the box, and Greedy Williams, a corner. So those are some pieces that they identified that I think if they had, this defense would have been significantly better.
Yeah, and let's take into account also that the Myles Garrett who came back after COVID wasn't quite the same guy, and then at the end of the year when they really could have used a compliment to him, Olivier Vernon wasn't there. So when I said that I think they had to be methodical in how they shore up the defense, I don't think there's huge holes everywhere, but I do think they need more speed defensively. I think they need more speed in their wide receiver core. Whether that comes from Odell Beckham Jr. or not, we really don't know at this point. But I think that's probably what you're going to see them target as a front office.
Yeah, and give Andrew Berry credit. The moves he made on the offensive side of the ball, Hooper, he was banged up, but he was pretty good. Conklin, he was pretty good. Wills, he was pretty. Teller, the moves they have made to upgrade the talent have been spot on, or at least very good moves.
Yeah, Dave. And the other thing I think we can talk about keeping Mayfield and Stefanski together as play caller, quarterback, and a front office, and all of those things are positives. They're also going to come back with a pretty intact offensive line, and it played as one of the better offensive lines in the league this year. Listen, there's never a guarantee that how you ended one season is how you're going to play and perform in the next season. We know that, but it's certainly there's a lot fewer weaknesses on this team than there was even a year ago.
Yeah, and the other thing about it is, Odell Beckham being gone kind of changed what Stefanski would do. Kevin Stefanski also said he expects pretty much his entire staff to be back intact, which, given all the musical chairs they had to play, that's another good thing. So you're talking about Van Pelt's second year with Mayfield and Bill Callahan's second year with that entire offensive line, which that should mean really good things.
Yeah, it should. Callahan's was a tremendous add this year when they were able to get him. And I just think that when you look at the offensive line, when you look at what you're getting out of tight end, I think Njoku, I know some people don't like him because he wanted out earlier this year, but I thought he had a pretty nice game yesterday. He's only 24 years old. He's still a guy that talent-wise is off the charts. Skill, athletic-wise is off the charts. So I think there's still a lot of room to grow yet with guys on this offense. Now, will Hunt and Chubb be content, sharing that role for a number of years? I don't know. The one thing I wanted to get your take on, Dave, was I was a little perplexed at how Stefanski used Hunt yesterday.
Yes, especially early. I would like to see more of Hunt and Chubb in the same backfield because Hunt can block. He has shown he's a pretty good blocker. So you could line him up at fullback, and then he's an elite receiver, which is, you can throw to the fullback, that you kind of get him lost like he's blocking, and all of a sudden he gets loose down the sidelines, and it's a big play.
Yeah, the way I think more often than not, they've used those two guys as like a relief running back.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to wear you down with Chubb early, and then we're going to come back in with Hunt, or we're going to use Hunt and then come back in with Chubb in the fourth quarter. Whereas I agree with you, I'd like to see a little bit more of both of those guys at the same time. They'd be a pretty difficult duo to deal with.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, in listening to Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, he said the entire playbook is open up with either of them. He said a lot of times you can say, when this guy comes in, they're going to pass. When this guy comes in, they're going to run. He said they use them interchangeably, which I get why you do that if you're the offensive coaches.
Yeah, and that's certainly what they were trying to do with Chubb yesterday, but then he ends up dropping a couple passes, which you can't, who knew that would happen. But.
And that was another part of it. That's why I say they didn't play well. The first half, the offense didn't look like the offense that we'd seen the last 9-10 weeks of the season. It just was not in sync. As good as they looked against the Steelers, they struggled that much against the Chiefs. And I know the Chiefs' defense had something to do with it, but they just didn't play as well as I thought they would come out and play.
Well, one of the things I read online, and I would say where it was if I remembered, but they took Stefanski to task for giving Mahomes the ball at the beginning of the game. I've come around on that. I used to think that was, if you have a good offense and you're the team that's coming with the momentum offensively like they did against Pittsburgh, that you probably want the ball first in a game like that. And maybe you don't give it to Patrick Mahomes, but I understand why teams do that. They love the double dip. They love to score at the end of the first half and get the ball back in the third quarter. I don't think it put this team behind, too demonstratively. So I didn't have an issue with them deferring the kickoff. I don't know whether you did or not.
No, I thought it was a little strange, but then for the exact reason you mentioned, especially with a run-heavy offense, you take it into the end zone to end the first half, you get it back, and you take it into the end zone, and you've kept that offense off the field for a huge chunk of the game. So I get the thinking behind it. You got to score. The bottom line is they didn't score enough points. You're not going to hold Kansas City. 22 is low, and they didn't have Mahomes for a good portion of the second half. So, 17 points wasn't going to win. At 16 points, 15 points, you were going to have to score in the 30s to probably win that game, I think.
Whether that was scoring first, scoring second, you're going to have to keep scoring. So that's why I didn't call it in question.
Offense didn't score enough, and the defense, I'm sorry, if Chad Henne's in there, you got to be able to get him off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up the idea of the other criticism was why they punted on 4th and, 9?
Yeah, you had to.
Again,
they're in field goal range if you miss, and then it's...
Yeah. I didn't think that was worth second guessing, and I certainly think that they thought their chances, and I would have agreed that their chances of getting the ball back from Chad Henne were better than making it on 4th and 9. I
would agree wholeheartedly. His Kevin Stefanski's explanation made a whole lot of sense. If it would have been 4th and 3, 4th and 4, we'd have gone for it. 4th and 9, count how many plays they gained 9 yards in that game. There were not a ton of them.
Sure, I agree. I didn't think that was even a topic of conversation to second guess them on that one.
But Sean and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will talk more Browns and Chiefs on the other side of the break. You see the number if you want to get involved. More sports and Les Levine. Dave Bacon filling in for Les Levine tonight.
A friend of mine brought up Nature Stone.
Our floor was not a nice garage floor. It was cracked and dirty and messy all the time, and it's just pretty. It's a pretty garage floor.
You could tell they really cared about what they were doing. They did an excellent job.
There's a room of lovely people here that have been so nice to us and so great and such great service from the guys who did the floor. And we just really appreciate that.
And I highly recommend it.
Schedule your free cost estimate today at naturestone.com.
It's not just a floor.
Wow, it's Naturestone.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget, Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
More sports and Les Levine continues. Dave Bacon filling in for Les Levine tonight. We'll be joined by Bud Shaw in just a second. The Browns finished up the season, lost by 5 to the Chiefs in the divisional round. Kevin Stefanski addressed how impressed he was with this year's rookie class.
Those rookies won't forget their rookie season, I promise you that. One of them told me it was a blur this morning, and I can definitely see that. There was a lot that went on. Did a lot of this over the computer, which is never easy for those guys, but I thought they battled through it. A lot of them made contributions for us early in this season and then late in this season as well. So I'm excited about those guys. They're not rookies anymore, and I'm counting on them moving forward.
Kevin Stefanski talking about this year's rookie class that includes Jedrick Wills, who switched from right tackle in college to left tackle in the pros seamlessly. Let's bring in Bud Shaw. Bud, that's an underappreciated thing that we haven't really discussed. They not only found their quarterback, I think they found their left tackle for a decade too.
I agree. I was really impressed with him. Probably the rookie that I was most impressed with, Dave, was Kevin Stefanski. And that's not to take anything away from the players. But when you step back from this and you look at what this organization, getting to know each other this year, coaching staff, players, coordinators, everybody, position coach, everybody, front office, this was really an impressive season. I remember telling people that I thought that they were really kind of behind the 8 ball in the division because their 2 biggest rivals have been so stable for so long, and that they both had their quarterbacks, they both had their coaches, and front offices that have been working together for a long time. And when you step back from it and you say the Browns won 1 fewer game than the Steelers, then beat them in the playoffs, and ended up having the same record as the Baltimore Ravens, I think it's a real testament to the entire organization.
Well, the other thing about that is, think about installing an entire new offense and defense virtually, and not, they weren't able to practice at times. So I would imagine
no training camp. All that.
And you did that as a first-year head coach. So not only do you have to get used to being the head coach, but oh, by the way, you got to do this, in some crazy way where you can't get your hands on your players and teach them the way you're used to.
Yeah, and you're going to coach your first playoff game from your basement. How's that? Who saw that happening, right?
I got to ask you, is there? I would think Kevin Stefanski is the NFL Coach of the Year. Opinion? Who else do you think gets consideration?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I know a lot of people say, hey, you have to look at teams that even though they've won before, they're still winning under tough circumstances. So people want like Andy Reid to get a call. They want Pete Carroll in Seattle, but I just think that you have to look at a team that has never done it before, facing these kinds of restrictions. And I can't see why anybody other than Stefanski would win it.
Yeah, I mean, first-year head coach, you not only get to the playoffs, you win a playoff game. You overcome, I think, the injuries. You know, everybody had injuries. Everybody had COVID issues. I don't know that any of them had quite as many of them as the Browns had late in the year, and still found a way to get in the playoffs and win a first-round playoff game and be, you know, with the ball with the chance to get to the conference finals as well.
Well, you know, the one guy in the organization that we should probably give a little more credit to, because his name doesn't get mentioned. He's not picking players. He's not coaching plays. But if there was one guy that had the right to say, "I told you so," you know, it's Paul DePodesta, you know, who wanted Stefanski a year ago, and you know, was really rowing upstream on that because of the success that Freddie Kitchens had, you know, as a coordinator late in the year. And, you know, it turned out he was right. And, you know, maybe he's been right about some other things that the Haslams sort of got away from over those previous seasons, and now are going to listen a little bit more to him. But good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a guy that was quote unquote a baseball guy. But we're going to welcome in Devin from Concord. Devin,
hey,
haven't heard from you in a while. We got a few minutes. Go ahead.
Mr. Bacon, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm going good. Hey, bud, how are you, man?
Good, Devin. How are you?
Well, you know, another one to rip your heart out and kick it down the street. You know, welcome to Cleveland, right?
Sure.
I tell you, I was surprised, you know, how we score against Baltimore, right? They have a great D. We score against Pittsburgh. They have a great D. The Chiefs didn't have that great of a defense.
Yep.
And yet we couldn't really run except for that third quarter. We couldn't run against them. And then Baker was under pressure a lot. And we couldn't get unraveled. Like that whole first half, it was like chaos. That was almost like that first half should have been the first half of the Steelers game where we had no practices. you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like we were out of loop there. Like nothing seemed to be in control. Then, of course, we know that you guys are so right that penalty has to change. Give the offense the ball at the 20, you know, because I understand, you know, the Fumbaruski, they don't want the Stabler to Banaszak to Casper to happen again.
Right.
You know,
that's what they're trying to guard against.
Yeah. Hey, Devin, I still think when the players look back at this, they're going to think, man, we had a chance and it got away. If you have Chad Henne in the game and you have the ball and you have a chance to go ahead, that game was winnable. That's the thing I think the Browns are going to be kicking themselves about.
Yeah, I mean, when he was in the game, you don't want to see anyone get hurt, but it's like, okay, we got a chance here.
Right.
And then that 3rd and 14.
Yeah.
I mean, and then, yeah. And the other thing, though, that when you lose like this, it exposes your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I love the analytics guys. You know, Bud knows this. I love the front office, and I love Stefanski. I've been praising them for a long time. They have to change their thought process on the linebackers. They don't seem to like that. I know that they don't want to think that they are a big cog in the grand scheme of defense, but you need to get a good linebacker in there, a guy that can play on 3rd down to cover tight end, and a guy that can still stop the run.
Yeah,
I know they wanted Delpit to be that guy to kind of come up and play the 8th guy in the box type thing.
Yep. You got to get guys that can run and tackle. They don't have enough speed, and they don't have enough guys that can run down people and tackle. And they need to upgrade the athletic ability of that linebacking core a little bit, I think.
And you know, like all the people that didn't like Odell, I think we win that game if he's in the game, because you know it showed our lack of speed at wideout too again.
Yep.
You know, people drops the ball. But anyways, you know, it's just one of those days. And when we're dropping every play matters in these games, like a crucial game like that.
Devin,
I mean, I
appreciate the call. We got to run. Thanks very much, Devin in Concord. Bud, a final thought on this as we wrap up our Browns segment for tonight.
Well, it's like we talked about, Dave. I understand why, you know, this is the honeymoon season and everybody feels great about what happened this year, and it was so much fun to watch. And fireworks going off in neighborhoods, and I think this is, we people enjoyed it for what it was, and next year they'll come back and they'll expect to see this, and that's when organizations have, that's when they really make their mark, is when they can meet expectations instead of beating everybody's expectations. So next year we'll probably end up being a little more critical if something like this happens. But yeah, I can see why Stefanski feels disappointed.
Yeah, but you know what? And you put it in perspective. It's a very nice first step. Now the toughest step is the second and the third one to get where you ultimately want to go. But at least we're at the point where the first step has been made.
Exactly. Now they have to do what Pittsburgh and Baltimore have done in this division and be good on a regular basis.
Bud Shaw, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Bud Shaw, the doctor, as we call him, Dr. Shaw. I'm sure we'll talk again. All right, we're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Chris Fedor joins us. Some Cavs news with Kevin Porter Jr., Andre Drummond. Cavs are playing pretty good as well. More sports and Les Levine will be right back. Stay with us.
We're living in uncertain times, but you don't have to put your future on hold. At Tri-C, you can move ahead while staying safe and saving money. The majority of fall classes will take place online, but we've added a variety of formats to meet your learning needs, and we've taken many steps to keep you safe on campus. Whether you're ready to get started or your four-year plans have changed, check out Tri-C's programs and resources, because Tri-C is where futures begin.
Well, hello, everyone. Let me tell you a little bit about Browns Football Insider. For only $3.99 a month, you can get texts sent right to your phone each day from me, Dan Lobby, Scott Pasco, and Ellis Williams. In addition to that, you'll receive a Football Insider newsletter every day with special things from us, things that you won't see anywhere else on the site. You'll get breaking news, analysis, features, film breakdown, and things like that. Texting us directly gives you a great chance to cut through the clutter of Facebook, Twitter, other social media, and avoid the trolls. Also, it's the only way to get your questions on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. So why should you sign up? Try a 14-day free trial. You can cancel at any time. All it takes is one text, but you won't want to cancel. We have hundreds of subscribers join us over the last year. They love it and have stayed with us. We're seeing the Football Insider community grow every week. And it's only $3.99 a month, which is less than 14 cents a day. What I like most about Football Insider is the opportunity to connect with you one-on-one and really communicate with you. So how can you become a Football Insider? You can click on cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. Or easier yet, text me at 216-208-3965. Again, that's 216-208-3965.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant. Whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at smiley1.com.
More sports and Les Levine continues. Dave Bacon filling in for Les Levine. Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. Chris, some news regarding Kevin Porter Jr., talented second-year guy. Cavs trying to get back on the court. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen anytime soon. Is a little bit of a blow-up between Kevin Porter and the front office, really. Take me through what you know and how this is expected to play out.
Well, how it's going to play out, Dave, and I appreciate you having me tonight, is the Cavs are going to move on. It's just a matter of when and if, and how it gets done, right? It's no longer a matter of if, I should say. It's how it gets done and when it gets done. They're going to try and trade him. They've They've been trying to take calls on KPJ for the last, I would say, 24 hours or so after the incident Friday night. But it wasn't just one incident on Friday night. This is a history of bad behavior. Unfortunately, he's been away from the team to address his personal issues. Everything that I was told is he wasn't doing the things that the Cavs wanted him to do during that time that he was away. And it's just a sad, unfortunate situation, not just because he's a talented player and he was somebody that the Cavs once looked at as a potential franchise cornerstone, but it's sad for KPJ because this is somebody who, was starting to spiral this past offseason, making poor decisions away from the court. He was somebody who came into the NBA with a lot of questions about his maturity and the decisions that he would make off the court. And that was always the primary question with him. And that's why he slid to the back end of the first round. And here we are, beginning of 2021. And the number one question that the Cavs and other teams are going to have about KPJ still lingers today. And it's whether he can ever reach the talent that he has because of him sabotaging every single opportunity that he's had to this point.
So the reports are that he was upset his locker was moved for one of the guys they acquired, got very vocal about it. Then Kobe Altman tried to calm down and got into it with Kobe Altman. Are those accurate from what you were being told as well?
Yeah, and the way that it was termed to me from a source was a petty outburst that made everybody in the locker room uncomfortable. I talked to a player that was there for that heated altercation, that heated verbal exchange between Kobe Altman and Kevin Porter Jr. They said it was really, really uncomfortable and they had to leave because they didn't want to be a part of that. So, you never want those kinds of things to happen, obviously. The fact that it was the general manager, Kobe Altman, and he couldn't calm KPJ down, and the fact that head coach JB Bickerstaff heard it as well, obviously that did not help Porter's, that did not help with anything when it comes to Kevin Porter Jr. Those two guys, JB Bickerstaff and Kobe Altman, are two of the guys that have tried to help Porter as much as possible. They are the ones that have invested a lot of time, effort, resources into helping him. And when neither of them could really calm him down in this kind of moment, that was obviously a bad sign. And again, it was the culmination of everything that has happened with him over the last couple of months, over the last, I would say, about year and a half, things along those lines. I think the Cavs just felt like, enough is enough here. We can't do this anymore. The juice is no longer worth the squeeze.
And when you look at what he's done on the floor, though, he was a guy, as you mentioned, he flashed. He has NBA talent, and put up some impressive numbers. But the question is, can you keep him from hurting himself, as you pointed out, when he's not on the court? And in the offseason, there were multiple issues, but those are some impressive statistics from him in 50 games last year. He could play.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Dave. I mean, I think any way you look at this is a setback, a minor setback for the organization's rebuild. At the end of last year, there were players in the locker room, there were members of the organization saying he was the one. He was the most talented of all the young guys, and that included Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Dylan Windler. And there were a lot of high hopes for him coming into year two, trying to build on what he was able to accomplish in his first year in the NBA after being the 30th pick in the first round. Those are the kinds, when you hit on those kinds of guys, those are things that change the trajectory of your franchise. But unfortunately, despite the work that the Cavs have done with Kevin Porter Jr., despite all of their efforts to try and get him reintegrated into this organization, it just hasn't worked. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. One player I talked to earlier today said, hey, look, how are we supposed to help him as an organization if he doesn't want to help himself? And this doesn't make excuses for him, but there is a lot that KPJ has gone through his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cavs have hinted at it, and they've talked about it. And Kobe Altman has even said a few different times, hey, he's a good kid. He's got a good soul, but he grew up in chaos. And that's the truth of this. And again, it doesn't excuse any of it. But he's a 20-year-old kid who has had a lot thrown at him in his life. He grew up in Seattle, a very, very tough area. It got to a point where he moved his family here to Cleveland with him, Dave, so that they could be safer. Unfortunately, everything that I have heard is that people that he has surrounded himself with are bad influences on him as well. And he feels a lot of pressure to help his family and get his family in a safe environment. And that's a lot to throw at a 20-year-old kid who has a lot of things that he still needs to figure out himself off the court.
Let's focus on some of the things that could potentially happen. So they're likely going to they're going to either trade or release Porter. Could you see them pairing him with somebody like Andre Drummond, because the Jack trade gives them, the ability to do some things, or Jared Allen trade rather, gives them the ability to do some things with a big man. What do you think they could get if they pair Kevin Porter Jr. and Andre Drummond? Is that a realistic thing, or?
Well, I think that's their hope. I think the Cavs are hoping that they don't have to go down the path of releasing him. I think he makes around $1.7 million. They picked up his contract option before this season. That also goes to show kind of the belief that the organization still had in him. Despite the troubles that he had this offseason, they still picked up his contract option at the same time that they did with Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Dylan Windler, the other young guys, right? They still brought him back to practice on Thursday, hoping that would help him. They allowed him to sit on the bench on Friday night during the New York Knicks game, believing that would help him as well. So, they were hoping that he could get it figured out and he could be a member of this moving forward. Now he's going to be somewhere else. I don't know where. I don't know his value in the NBA, Dave, because on one hand, obviously, he's a really talented kid. He was a first-round pick for a reason. There are a lot of people that felt in the 2019 draft he had top 5, top 10 type potential, and he fell to the back end of the first round because of the off-the-court stuff. Maybe you can attach him to JaVale McGee, Andre Drummond, and get something. That would be better for the Cavs, obviously, than just cutting him. But I talked to an opposing executive earlier today that said, if he's not already on his last legs in the NBA, he's going to get one more shot with one more team, and that's probably it. So he's going to have to make better decisions wherever that place is that he goes. You know how this goes oftentimes, Dave. Teams are willing to gamble on talent, and then if it becomes too much, then they move on as well. I think he probably gets at least one more shot because he is still so young. He does have so much talent. But the value that the Cavs would get back for him is not a lot at this point in time. And that's why, like you said, maybe they attach him to Andre Drummond, JaVale McGee, and then KPJ is considered by another team some kind of sweetener in that particular deal.
Let's look at the Cavs through where they get 6 wins. When you look at where it's been the last couple of years, you see it. A couple years ago, it was 6-20. Last year, 6-19. Now they sit at 6-7. So it's very interesting, and it's a sign of growth. And it's important to point out, Cavs are doing that without Colin Sexton, without Darius Garland. They're banged up and still finding a way to win. How impressive have they been? What are they doing well?
They've been really impressive because, as you said, there are a lot of things that have been working against them, on top of the fact that they were off the court for 9 months because they weren't allowed into the Disney bubble. So coming into this season, they had some hurdles that they were going to have to overcome, right? And then the season starts, and then they have to deal with more adversity in terms of the injuries and in terms of lineup shuffling. So the fact that they are where they are right now, Dave, I think that's a testament to this organization. I think it's a testament to JB Bickerstaff. It's a testament to the players that have been healthy enough to play, that they have bought in and they believe in what the Cavs are trying to do here. A big reason why they're 6-7 is because Andre Drummond's been one of the best big men in the NBA. That cannot be overlooked. Even though they acquired Jared Allen and he's the long-term center for this organization, Andre Drummond has been great. And I don't think we should discount what he's meant to this organization's turnaround, even going back to last February. They have a record around 500 with Andre Drummond in the lineup. It goes to show how important it is. It goes to show what he can do offensively, what he can do defensively, and the buy-in that he has had since coming over from Detroit in that trade. So the way that they're doing it, Dave, ironically, defensively, we spent the entire offseason wondering if this team could make positive steps on the defensive end, given the personnel that they have. And they're a top 5 defense in the NBA so far. Their offense has been spotty at best because of the guys that they've been missing. But the defense and the competitiveness that they play with on a nightly basis, that has allowed them to hang in games and win more than I think people would expect, given all the circumstances that they've had to deal with.
What about getting healthy? When do they expect Sexton back, Garland back, some of the guys that have been missing to be able to play finally?
Yeah. So the Cavs practiced earlier this afternoon at Cleveland Clinic Courts. Dylan Windler was back, Darius Garland was back, and Colin Sexton was back. That's a huge component of this. And Taurean Prince and Jared Allen, the newbies, were able to practice for the first time because the trade is now official. They had to go through some hoops for that. They had to wait on some things that were outside of their control, but now the guys are with them and they can practice. So they're getting healthier. It's hard to say that Dylan, Darius, and Colin are all going to be back on Wednesday, because what matters most here, Dave, is how do they recover from their first live action in quite some time. It's the first time Dylan's been able to practice since fracturing his left hand on opening night. So they want to see how all of these guys come through it, right? And if they don't have setbacks and they can continue to take the steps they need to in their recovery and continue to make progress, then I think there is a chance that all 3 or 2 or 1 of the guys are going to be available Wednesday night against the Brooklyn Nets. So this break in the schedule came at a good time. It allowed them more practice time than what they had earlier on. And it looks like these guys, if not Wednesday, are very, very close to returning.
Last thing I'll ask you before I let you go, you mentioned Brooklyn Nets Wednesday. Word is Kyrie Irving may be coming back as well. What have you heard about that? What do you think will happen? Why Irving's missed a boatload of time? Just talk a little bit about that and what you expect it to be like if he is in fact back at now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse here in Cleveland.
Man, it would be the first time, Dave, that he came back since 2017. I mean, the first time he came back, the only time he played in Cleveland was his first game ever as a Boston Celtic. And obviously he wasn't going to miss opening night, his first ever game with the Celtics. So it's interesting that he may come back on Wednesday. I don't think it's a guarantee at this point, but it would be fascinating to see how the smaller than usual crowd would handle his return, because it seems like even though more time has passed since his time with the Cavs, more things have happened to anger the fans when it comes to Kyrie. So his reputation, you would think, would have gotten better with more time. It's gone the other way. And I think even though he is so meaningful to this organization's history, he is still very disliked by a segment of fans. And I would expect it to be mixed in terms of the reaction that he gets on Wednesday night if he plays.
Chris Fedor, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Chris Fedor, the Cavs beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. Chris, appreciate the time. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you throughout the season. As always, great insight. Thank you.
You got it, Dave. Anytime.
Well, there's Chris Fedor, and we're all out of time on this edition of More Sports and Less Levine. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Stay safe.